Alright, so this is my makeup work on the socio-economic presentation interactive oral for Pedro Paramo. I am Helen Feng, and I will be presenting on race and on gender. So there are a lot of different ethnic groups within Mexico, but if you look closer, there are a few that you can identify easily. So the easiest group to identify are the Amerindians. They are the people who were native to Mexico before any colonization. So this would be like the Inca or the Aztec people. And then the Mestizo are the people who have some European heritage as well. So they would be typically like the more light-skinned people. If we were to compare this to like Indian classes, they would be at the top. And so there is some class tensions between the two. So the Europeans tend to be more rich, typically dominating society, and the Amerindians are near the bottom. Now, within race relations, there's mestizaje, which are Mexican ideals that encourage interracial marriage, so there has been some progress since the colonization and imperialistic times. And the indigenous groups are typically formed by what language they speak, but of course there are over 60 different languages spoken, so there are some overlap in those groups. And so then here we have a picture of mestizo. You can see that they look more European than they do Mexican. And then here we have a picture of some modern Amerindians. So gender plays a really prevalent role within Pedro Paramo, and although you might see some similarities, as with Great Gatsby, as it was a similar time period, there are also some big differences, just culturally. So women during the Revolution were responsible for mainly food prep and medical care. So on the Revolution, they were typically more like nurses or shelter givers. But then there, of course, are always some exceptions. For example, La Mujer Moderna, and this is a painted depiction of her by Andrea Villarreal in 1919, and she was known as the Mexican Joan of Arc, and this phenomenon was present in many cases. So for instance, women would disguise themselves as men, they would bind their chests and fight for their fathers, as there was the case in Mulan, as Lily put on our slides, or just to defend the nation out of a sense of patriotism. So that is a depiction of some of those female revolutionaries. So some gender roles in 20th century Mexico. In 1910, women were 14% of the workforce, but they were still, firstly, women were just homemakers, mothers, wives before anything else. But in 1916, there was two feminist congresses led by Ermia Galinda about education, so getting your kids into school, and rather than just sending your male sons, you'd also be sending your daughters. Job safety, so demanding equal pay, or at that time not equal pay, but fair pay for what they considered fair. And just sexual health, so preventative measures, and if the case need be, adoption. So there is a picture of a woman on the Revolutionary Trail during the Mexican Revolution. So, in a connection to the book, Susana San Juan is sort of an anomaly in terms of gender within Pedro Paramo, because she's not always obeying her male counterparts. They can't control her, such as Pedro Paramo, Bartolome, her father, and Father Renteria, the priest in Comala. She's neither a homemaker nor a mother. On page 100, we see her description of her sexual encounter with her husband. And talking about sex is very taboo when it comes to women. It's almost always limited to the men. So here we have a picture from the 1967 movie adaptation of Pedro Paramo. There you see Susana San Juan on her deathbed, and then further up there is Pedro Paramo and Father Renteria. And in this scene, even in the throes of death, she is still disobeying. She's not listening to the priest, even talking back to him sarcastically. So this is a quote that relates to the more medieval sense of gender at the time. So it's a conversation between Father Renteria and his niece. "You are sure he was the one, aren't you?" "I'm not positive, Uncle. No, I never saw his face. He surprised me at night, and it was dark." "Then how did you know it was Miguel Paramo?" because he said so. It's Miguel Paramo, Anna. Don't be afraid. That was what he said. But you knew he was responsible for your father's death, didn't you? Yes, uncle. So what did you do to make him leave? I didn't do anything. So this conversation just illustrates how helpless and submissive she felt, as men were very controlling at the time, and her uncle's just inability to understand her position. And as well, like, just further beyond this quote, you can see how Dorothea even was supplying women for him for Miguel, just out of the need for safety in her life, just have a house and steady food. So that ends my section of the presentation. Thank you.